Welcome to game week. 3 days away from kickoff. Florida Gators and Ole Miss Rebels in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium on ESPN. Joe Tessitore and Greg McElroy on the call. Marty Smith on the sideline. It truly is a great day. We're here on Wednesday, September 23rd. And we have a lot of stuff to get to. We have David Waters from Gators Breakdown going to talk a little bit about the game, about the conference as a whole a little bit later on. And we're going to talk about Otis Reese's letter. And we're going to talk about Deion Sanders' staff that was made up. Something to keep an eye on, something to pay attention to. But before we do that, we're going to get into the places you can follow this show. You can follow us on Twitter at the Stephen Willis or at Old Positively. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast. We have a Facebook group as well, Old Positively. You can subscribe on YouTube at Positively Ole Miss and hit the bell. And you can subscribe at and follow at Twitch at Old Positively. Just a heads up on those last three, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Those are all available on smart TV apps. You can follow the podcast there, put it on the background if you prefer. If not, we're available on all the audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, SoundCloud. We're trying to get on, iHeartRadio and Pandora. We're in the process of doing that. You can use your Alexa connected devices to listen to the podcast via TuneIn Radio and Spotify. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So our goal is to try and be everywhere that you are already. We're not going to ask you to go to a second location, and we're not going to try and extort money for you. All this is 100% free. I just happen to be in a unique position to do this. My resume, just to let you know, all the Facebook followers we've been adding in the last couple of days, thank you very much, is 20 years in journalism. 3 years I had an office in the Manning Center. I worked at a top 30 market in TV, and I worked in the national media for a decade. I would put my resume up against pretty much everybody on the beat. So keep that in mind, especially when I'm about to say what I'm about to say. Because, let's get into it, the floated staff of Deion Sanders. A reporter rushed to Twitter and put it down. He heard it from somebody. Didn't verify it from anybody. It was incorrect. It was vehemently denied by Deion Sanders, and even worse denied by Warren Sapp. But journalists used that as talking points that Deion Sanders is going to fail, and was laughing at Deion Sanders. That's what we're dealing with now. Activism journalism has killed the industry. It's not about what's happening like it used to be. It's about what you think about what is happening. It's about your opinion, not reporting the facts. Journalism, especially print journalism, is dead. There's no sense to pay any money whatsoever for that product. The only reason you would is if you agree with the opinion and are basically paying to be coddled. But that's just the truth. Somebody running with a fact. And you see it all the time in the Oxford echo chamber. You see it a lot. And they desperately need a win. And they're hoping like heck Matt Corral goes out first, because any tiny win it will make up for the fact that they were 2-25 over the last 3 signing days or something like that. Their credibility is gone. That's the reason I'm here. Because you can't believe what is happening. I mean, some of the people reporting on Ole Miss, it would be a better situation if Steve Robertson were reporting on them. He knows more about Ole Miss than they do. But that is to be expected when you spend a decade talking about how you're not learning the game. You're doing something else while the game is going on. And you're just kind of half-assing it. I understand that. Now they're at a point where they're looking for that small pond to get bigger, and they're trying any way they can to make it happen. And there's only so many ways you can do that. It was a small pond to begin with. But you just can't believe activism journalism. People are going to have an agenda. I've said over and over and over again on this podcast, there are three agendas associated with, one of the three agendas associated with every news story: money, influence, ambition. That's attached to every one. And you need to understand that. Because in doing that, the selfishness of that will tear Ole Miss apart. You will lose fan base members. I mean, that's really just a simple way to look at it. But again, on the quarterback competition, hope we find a quarterback. Don't root for a quarterback. We're Ole Miss fans. We're not fans of an individual player. Period. They did a good job of getting you sucked into that. They really did. They did a fantastic job. But remember, hope we find a quarterback. Don't root for a quarterback. Simple advice. And I've gone on a little bit of a first segment rant here about journalism. I hope that's okay. But it's really important that you pay attention even more than you were before, because you could be being misled. You could be being lied to. You could be used as a pawn for another thing. We'll see you in segment 2.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop.
Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
Welcome back, Stephen Willis, the POMcast, right here on Positively Ole Miss. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheStephenWillis or the show at Ole Positively. Like us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/POMcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Positively Ole Miss. Hit the bell, please, for notifications. And follow us on Twitch. We're also available on a plethora of audio devices. All the podcatchers out there, a plethora. Yes. Yes, indeed. Anyway, I'm Stephen Willis. It's game week. 3 days until kickoff, until Florida basically comes to town. That's pretty cool. Now, in a second, we are going to have David Waters from Gators Breakdown to basically talk about the game from the Florida side of things and kind of give you an idea of what's going on. He hosts a podcast down there that is ran on Channel 4 in Jacksonville. It'll be a good listen. But before we do that, Otis Reese wrote a letter yesterday, included Greg Sankey, included the NCAA, basically an open letter of why isn't he eligible. He transferred in January. If he was a quarterback right now, he would be eligible. That's just the fact. You look at JT Daniels, you look at all these quarterbacks around the country, they get automatically eligible. He did not. And he described a couple of racist events at Georgia. I'm not here to play court on that. He also talked about he had Kirby Smart's approval. Now, Kirby Smart said he could leave, but he didn't. He basically found out recently that Georgia is opposing the transfer and the initial eligibility. The same thing probably they did with Cade Mays at Tennessee. But it's something to keep an eye out. And the first time transfer, I'm for a guaranteed transfer because, as I've said before, there are no such thing as a non-system player. Rankings and recruiting based off one system is not correct. That's the reason there's 3 and 2 stars everywhere. You're going to fit a different way no matter where you are. So, NCAA, do your part. Free Otis Reese and get him on the field. Up next, we have David Waters from Florida Breakdown. Hope you enjoy it. All right. Welcome back to Around the SEC. We go to David Waters from GatorsBreakdown.com, the podcast, as well as News4Jacksonville.com. David, this is kind of a hot way to go into this, but what are you looking forward to in this game that is kind of COVID related since we finally got through this?
Well, luckily we got some football, so that's the first thing I think. And we're kind of looking at Florida. Florida had a recent spike in COVID. What we've learned about the last couple of weeks, and kind of expected when students would start arriving on campus and stuff. And look, coaches, not just Dan Mullen, but coaches around the SEC and stuff, they're not really going to. I don't think we're going to hear too much specifics in names ahead of game time. I think, and I'm not even really sure how, in watching past games and the games that have already kicked off and stuff, of how in detail these programs want to get with that. If a guy's not playing, you can probably put 2 and 2 together. But there's all kind of laws and stuff out there about putting, with medical information, about putting people's names out there. So, we'll see who lines up for Florida. There's some guys who are, on a depth chart that was released on Monday. If that depth chart, was released and some guys are not playing and they were on that depth chart, then you could probably put 2 and 2 together that maybe something in that realm happened, because most of the time they'll announce suspensions, they'll announce injuries and all that. But if you don't get a lot of detail and a guy's not playing, then you could probably put it together that it's going to be some COVID-related, information behind the scenes.
Yes, absolutely. And Dan Mullen is notoriously stingy with health-related information anyway. And this COVID thing is just exasperated.
Yeah, dealing with that is a fun aspect when Mullen. So he knew on Monday when he was doing his game week press conference, that's the first thing he led with was injuries. So he knows the media is going to look for it. But yeah, his history plus COVID, you're not getting much out of him.
All right, let's talk about some players that we might not know. Everybody knows Kyle Pitts, Kyle Trask. Everybody knows about that. Who are some extra players that we need to look for this weekend?
Yeah, I think you got to go Florida's offensive line and the running backs. That's got to be the biggest improvement for this Gator team. If Florida wants to end up in Atlanta and go, beat Georgia, end up in Atlanta and challenge for a college football playoff spot, they're going to have to get that offensive line and that running game figured out. So we'll start with some running backs here. Malik Davis was a true freshman in 2017. Jim McElwain's last year was probably, if not the best, one of the best offensive players going back to 2017. He got injured in the Georgia game just past midseason and missed that, then got hurt again in 2018. And hasn't necessarily been able to trust himself getting injured so much. So he did play a whole lot, or he played in every game last season, but we didn't see that 2017 form. So I'm looking for Malik Davis to maybe regain that form from 2017. But let's not forget about Dameon Pierce, who was second, in carries behind LaMichael Pirine, who's now off to the NFL. So Dameon Pierce, Malik Davis. I think you look at those two guys at running back for Florida, and it's going to be so dependent on this offensive line and taking the big steps there. We were really looking at Ethan White. He was a true freshman last year, played a lot toward the end of the season. For him to be starting at center, well, he's injured, and he'll be out for a while with a knee injury. So, Brett Hagee will slide over from left guard to center there. But, one name, and the Ole Miss side may be a little more familiar with it, but Stuart Reese transferred from Mississippi State to Florida. I know you were kind of looking at a lesser name, but he is an offensive lineman. They don't get a whole lot of love, and him transferring from Florida or transferring to Florida from Mississippi State, where Dan Mullen and John Hivesy recruited him. That's a name that I think Ole Miss fans may be familiar with, but maybe have forgotten that either he'd be off to the NFL or something. But no, he's going to spend his last year with his brother at the University of Florida. So it's a big-time transfer from Florida where they needed help along the offensive line. So I think singling out Stuart Reese and those Florida running backs, I think, given everything and all the troubles they went through last year, that's what's going to carry Florida to the next step.
Okay, David Waters, Gators Breakdown podcast and news4jacksonville.com is here with us at the moment. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. I know they lost a couple of defensive linemen. How are they looking in that position, and who are some potential standouts on that side of the ball?
Yeah, looking at the pass rushers, kind of what you're looking for there. They lost Jonathan Gennard, who was a transfer from Louisville last year. Really came onto the scene, was the best defensive player for the Gators last year. Jabari Zuniga right up there in pass rushing skill as well. He was injured a bit last season, but when he was on the field, he was a big force for the Gators. So you're looking at Brenton Cox, who was a five-star transfer from Georgia, didn't get to play last year. And he gets to play this year. Probably, he'll split time between the rush defensive end and that rush in position that they like to call the buck position. I look for Brenton Cox to really, all throughout camp, we have heard how much of a monster he is, kind of living up to that five-star billing that he was as a recruit. So that's one player there you're looking at replacing the pass rushers from last year. And also Jeremiah Moon, redshirt senior for the Gators this year. He's going to split time also in that rush in buck position. Florida has a lot of versatility on this defense. So when you look at Brenton Cox, Jeremiah Moon, another player like Mamu Diabate, who got put as a linebacker on the depth chart, he can play buck. He can play defensive end if he needs to as well. So, those are three guys right there that they're really going to have to look toward to in replacing a lot. I mean, Florida had 49 sacks last year. They had 10 versus Miami in the opener, 8 versus Florida State to close the season, 18 sacks in just those two games, but 49 on the year. Look, Todd Grantham's going to find a pass rusher. That's just part of his defense. He's going to identify somebody. He's done it in his first 2 years at Florida. You're looking at three guys, I think, who can make an impact there. You're looking at Brenton Cox, Jeremiah Moon, and Mamu Diabate.
All right, David Waters, Gators Breakdown Podcast, news4jax.com. Okay, we're going to go a little bit of conference-wide at the moment. What are a couple of games that you are looking forward to in the SEC, and why?
You mean for week one or just
week one? Week one.
Yeah. Tennessee, South Carolina. What team can take that next step? And I know Tennessee's thought to be, the better team here. South Carolina, Will Muschamp's given that program a lot of trouble in recent years, and ever dating back to his time at Florida as well. And it's kind of a statement game for, I think, both coaches. Can Will Muschamp kind of right the wrong from last year? I know they had a very tough schedule last year. Can they bounce back? Mike Bobo comes in as offensive coordinator to kind of, kind of fixing another Will Muschamp offense. I mean, how many times have we heard, they're changing coordinators and maybe this is the guy that fixes it all? But I'm really high on Mike Bobo. A lot of experience, of course, at Georgia in the SEC as well. So I do look for him to have some success, maybe not initially, career-wise at South Carolina, but I do think they'll get better under him if Will Muschamp's given the time there. And then other side, Jeremy Pruitt there and Jarrett Garantano. Can Garantano take that next step in making Tennessee maybe live up to some expectations they haven't had in quite a couple seasons there? So a few seasons since Butch Jones was fired. So that storyline of that game, just because of the coaches, I think, needing to take that next step. And then, of course, I think Kentucky-Auburn is the other kind of marquee game for the SEC this week. Kentucky, very tough, an offensive line that's going to go against a new-look Auburn defensive line in the trenches here. I think this is a really important game for Auburn, their new-look offensive line, their new-look defensive line going against the trenches of Kentucky that has a lot of experience and kind of used to playing that smash-mouth kind of football. So that's kind of – I know Auburn's favored, but I think I'm going Kentucky to upset Auburn this week just because I think there's a little bit more familiarity with their roster and where they're strong at. I think Auburn has a lot of questions at it right now. So I think those two games right there are probably the ones I'm pointing to the most besides the Florida game.
All right. David Waters, Gators Breakdown Podcast and News4Jax.com. I really appreciate you stopping by, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida's trusted choice independent insurance agents.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis. I just want you to stick around a little longer. We're going to get back to the podcast right after these messages.
Tonight, nearly 40,000 veterans across the country are homeless. These men and women have pledged to serve our nation, and now we must serve them. Landlords across the country have helped make significant progress in reducing veteran homelessness by making housing available, but there is more that we can do to bring our veterans home. Visit www.va.gov/homeless to see how you can get involved. And if you are a veteran and you are experiencing homelessness, please call 877-4AID-VET. Thank you.
Hey, David Waters, GatorsBreakdown.com, News4Jax.com. Coming in, dropping some knowledge, picking an upset. Kentucky over Auburn in week 1. I'm looking forward to it. Really, just by the minute. They can't get here soon enough. It just can't get here soon enough. Hey, yesterday with the Ole Miss uniforms, we got a little bit of further information on the digs. I think the kids are saying that these days. The digs of the Ole Miss football team. White pants. Powder blue jersey, powder blue helmet. We haven't seen the socks or cleats. We've seen the gloves. They are powder blue as well. And probably for the first time in a long time, Rebels will be painted it in powder blue. Now, you're probably asking why they're not doing it like they did for Vandy last year, where it's a powder end zone with the Red Rebels. And the point is, I think they don't want to paint the whole end zone the whole season. I think once the weather turns, they'll paint it. But before then, they're going to kind of keep it green as much as possible. They'll paint the Rebels, they'll paint the Ole Miss, and you'll have that. The Ole Miss script at midfield is red. The SEC logo is powder blue and red as well. It all looks fantastic. It just really does. And I think, let's see. I think that this will give them a bump in recruiting. I think Tysheem Johnson is due to announce on the 30th. It looks like it could be Ole Miss. It's either an Ole Miss or Arizona State competition, I believe. And we're going to find somebody that is a recruiting expert. I know I worked at Rivals for a decade and I was in charge of their video library, and I could do that on my own. I just want a different voice on this channel for that. So I imagine we're going to be able to have terrific conversations about recruiting and exactly what that means, and we can go into a breakdown at a higher level than you're used to seeing. But I just don't want to do that by myself. Not at the moment. Because this is all just a growth phase. This is about getting my voice back to normal. This is about growing the base. This is about establishing the brand. That's the reason you see things at 8 o'clock in the morning, at 10 o'clock in the morning, and at around the SEC will be at 2 o'clock on Thursdays and at 8 o'clock on Saturdays. It'll be the pregame show. If you're going to Oxford or you're home gating, it's something you can listen to before game day comes on. So we're going to stream it then. So that's kind of cool. We're set to record that tonight. We're going to play that David Waters interview again. We're going to use that again. Plus, we have another interview that is just for Around the SEC from the Believe in Georgia Dogs podcast. So we're trying to multitask here. We're trying to give you something that you haven't gotten before. And, we're doing something that has likely never been done in recorded history. We don't have a site. In the history of advertising, on a site, you go out and you try and get them to come back to a location. You want them to go to that second location. You meet them, you talk them into going home. We don't have a second location. We're completely mobile. We're like a food truck. We're like Omaha Steaks. We don't want you to go to a second location. We do not want money from you. All we want from you is your time. All we want from you is your passion. All we want from you is your knowledge. That's it. And if all of that is not for you, hey, go do something else. That's great. There are people out there that this is what they want. It's a higher level of football breakdown, not built on cliches, somebody that actually pays attention. I'm not going to play the game like the Oxford Echo Chamber does, like the activist journalist, like the agendas up there. I'm not going to get into their drama. I'm not going to get into really anything that they do, because I have a plan of what I want to do. And whenever that is unveiled, people assuming what I'm going to do, they're going to see how wrong they were. This is going to be pretty cool. This is going to be a heck of a ride. But we have to get through this football and basketball season first. And I need to relocate to my palatial Central Florida studios. But anyway, David Waters, thank you very much for coming on the show. And we have a lot of stuff this weekend. We are probably going to do a short We've Got Notes. That's the name of the after game show. We've Got Notes. And put it on the channel and stream it like normal. That'll be the 8 o'clock in the morning Monday stream as well. So I want to thank everybody for listening, and tune in tomorrow for more great stuff on the POMcast.